Dr. Maya Rivers was no stranger to airports. As a world-renowned surgeon and the founder of one of the largest nonprofit hospitals in the country, she spent much of her life traveling for conferences, surgeries, and charity events. This time, however, it was supposed to be different. It was just another routine flight from New York to Los Angeles. A short break from her busy schedule to attend a medical conference where she would deliver a keynote speech on pediatric cardiology. Little did she know that this trip would turn into something far more than she had ever imagined. On the morning of her departure, Dr. Rivers woke up early. She packed her carry-on bag carefully, making sure everything she needed was organized. Inside the bag were her laptop, a folder filled with research papers, a stethoscope, and a small pouch containing prescription medications for an ongoing health condition. These medications were clearly labeled with her name and dosage instructions, something she always ensured when traveling. After all, as a doctor herself, she understood how important it was to follow proper protocols. When she arrived at the airport, the terminal buzzed with its usual energy. Families hurried toward their gates, business travelers typed away on laptops in the waiting areas, and children laughed as they chased each other around columns. Dr. Rivers walked calmly through the crowd, her heels clicking softly against the tiled floor. She wore a tailored navy blue blazer over a crisp white blouse, paired with dark slacks, a professional yet approachable look that reflected her personality. Her curly black hair framed her face neatly, and her warm smile hinted at the kindness patients often praised her for. At security, things seemed normal at first. Dr. Rivers joined the line, patiently waiting her turn. When it was finally her time to step forward, she placed her items onto the conveyor belt, shoes off, laptop out, liquids sealed in a clear plastic bag. Everything went smoothly until the machine beeped unexpectedly. A TSA agent motioned for her to step aside for additional screening. This wasn't unusual, at least not entirely. Over the years, Dr. Rivers had been pulled aside for extra checks before, but this time felt different. Instead of a quick pat-down or a brief inspection of her belongings, the process dragged on. One agent rummaged through her bag while another questioned her about the medications inside. "Are these yours?" the agent asked sharply, holding up the pouch. "Yes," Dr. Rivers replied calmly. "They're prescribed to me. You can see my name on the labels." But the agent didn't seem satisfied. He glanced at the labels skeptically, then called over a supervisor. More questions followed. What were the medications for? Why did she need them? Did she have documentation proving they belonged to her? Each question came faster than the last, chipping away at the calm demeanor Dr. Rivers had maintained so far. Passengers passing by began to notice. Some stared curiously, while others whispered among themselves. A few even slowed down to watch the scene unfold. For Dr. Rivers, it was humiliating. Here she was, a highly respected doctor who had dedicated her life to saving others, being treated like someone trying to smuggle contraband. And despite her best efforts to stay composed, she couldn't ignore the growing knot of frustration tightening in her chest. By the time the agents finally let her go, she was running late for her flight. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from anger and disbelief. How could this happen? Was it because of her skin color, her profession, or simply bad luck? Whatever the reason, she knew one thing for certain: this wasn't going to end here. As she rushed toward her gate, dragging her suitcase behind her, Dr. Rivers made a silent promise to herself. If this incident was meant to shame her, it had failed. Instead, it had ignited a fire within her, a determination to fight back against the injustice she had faced. Little did anyone know, this moment would soon become the spark for something much bigger. Dr. Maya Rivers stood in the crowded security checkpoint, her heart pounding as TSA agents surrounded her. She had already answered their questions about her medications multiple times, yet they continued to scrutinize her belongings with an intensity that felt disproportionate. The pouch containing her prescriptions lay open on the table, its labels clearly displaying her name and dosage instructions. But none of this seemed to matter. "Ma'am, can you explain why you're carrying these medications?" one agent asked again, his tone sharp and accusing. "I've already told you," Dr. Rivers replied firmly but politely. "They're for a medical condition I have. Everything is properly labeled, and I carry them with me whenever I travel." The agent exchanged a glance with his colleague before turning back to her. "We'll need further verification," he said, ignoring her explanation. By now, a small crowd had gathered nearby, watching the scene unfold. Some travelers whispered behind cupped hands, while others openly stared. A young mother holding her toddler's hand shot Dr. Rivers a sympathetic look, but most people simply moved past, eager to avoid being delayed themselves. For Dr. Rivers, however, there was no escape. As the minutes ticked by, the agents grew more aggressive. They dumped the contents of her bag onto the inspection table, a jumble of papers, pens, chargers, and personal items sprawled out haphazardly. Her laptop was swabbed repeatedly for traces of explosives, even though it had already passed through the X-ray machine without issue. Each action carried an air of suspicion, as if they believed she was hiding something sinister beneath the surface of her professional appearance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the supervisor stepped forward. He glanced briefly at the medications and then turned to Dr. Rivers. "Do you have any documentation proving these belong to you?" he asked, his voice cold and clinical. "Yes," she replied, pulling out her ID card and a copy of her prescription from her wallet. "Here's my identification and proof from my doctor. Is this enough?" The supervisor studied the documents but didn't seem satisfied. "We'll hold on to these for now," he said, taking the papers without permission. "You can retrieve them later once we confirm their authenticity." Dr. Rivers clenched her fists, struggling to keep her composure. Inside, she was seething. How dare they treat her this way? She wasn't some random traveler. They were questioning a respected surgeon who had saved countless lives. Yet here she was, reduced to defending herself against baseless accusations. When the agents finally allowed her to leave, nearly 30 minutes had passed. Her flight was boarding, and she was dangerously close to missing it. Grabbing her belongings hastily, she hurried toward her gate, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and anger. Passengers waiting in line gave her curious glances as she rushed past, but she kept her head down, unwilling to meet anyone's eyes. Reaching the gate just as the final call was announced, Dr. Rivers collapsed into her seat on the plane, exhausted. As the aircraft taxied down the runway, she replayed the incident over and over in her mind. Why had this happened? Was it because she was black? Or was it simply bad luck? Either way, it left a bitter taste in her mouth. That evening, unable to shake off the humiliation, Dr. Rivers decided to share her story online. Sitting in her hotel room, she typed out a detailed post describing everything that had occurred at the airport. She included photos of her medications and the crumpled receipts she'd been forced to show the TSA agents. At the end of the post, she wrote, "I'm sharing this not because I want sympathy, but because no one should be treated this way, especially when they're doing nothing wrong." Asterisk. She hesitated for a moment before hitting post. Within seconds, notifications began flooding in. Comments poured in from strangers offering support, sharing similar experiences, and expressing outrage. By midnight, her post had gone viral, sparking conversations across social media platforms. Hashtags like #StandWithMaya and #EndRacial Profiling started trending, drawing attention not only to her case but also to larger issues of bias in airport security. For Dr. Rivers, it was both validating and overwhelming. What had begun as a frustrating day at the airport had transformed into something much bigger than she could have anticipated. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Would you like me to continue writing the next part or make adjustments to this section? Let me know. By morning, Dr. Maya Rivers' phone was buzzing nonstop. Her post had gone viral overnight, reaching millions of people around the world. The #StandWithMaya was trending on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. Thousands of comments poured in from strangers who shared their own stories of racial profiling at airports. Some recounted being stopped repeatedly for no reason. Others described how TSA agents had treated them with suspicion simply because of the color of their skin. One woman wrote, "This happened to me last year when I was traveling with my kids. They made me feel like a criminal in front of everyone. Thank you for speaking up, Dr. Rivers." Another commenter said, "I'm so sorry this happened to you. As a nurse, I know how hard it is to deal with bias in healthcare, and now we see it everywhere else too." The outpouring of support was overwhelming, but what shocked Dr. Rivers the most were the messages from airline employees. Many of them reached out anonymously, sharing disturbing details about internal practices within the airline chain involved in her case. One former employee revealed that staff members often received unofficial instructions to target passengers based on appearance or behavior. something never written down but understood by those working there. They train us to look for suspicious profiles, the anonymous source explained in a direct message. People of color, especially women, are flagged more often than anyone else. It's not fair, but it happens all the time. Other employees confirmed similar patterns, describing a culture where racial stereotypes influence decisions behind closed doors. These revelations only fueled public outrage further, turning what started as an isolated incident into a broader discussion about systemic discrimination in the travel industry. News outlets quickly picked up the story, amplifying its reach. Major networks began airing segments featuring interviews with civil rights activists, legal experts, and even passengers who claimed they'd faced similar treatment. Journalists dug deeper into the airline's history, uncovering past complaints filed against the company for discriminatory practices. Meanwhile, Dr. Rivers found herself thrust into the spotlight. Requests for interviews flooded her inbox, and reporters camped outside her hotel in Los Angeles. At first, she hesitated to engage with the media frenzy. She hadn't intended to start a movement. She just wanted to share her experience. But as the hours passed, she realized the magnitude of what was happening. People weren't just rallying behind her, they were demanding change. Encouraged by the overwhelming support, Dr. Rivers decided to speak out publicly. She gave her first televised interview to a prominent news anchor, sitting calmly in front of the camera as she recounted every detail of the humiliating encounter at the airport. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes betrayed the pain she still felt. "No one deserves to be treated the way I was treated," she said firmly. "It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, a teacher, or a parent. It shouldn't happen. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who has ever been made to feel less than human because of their race." Her words resonated deeply with viewers. Clips from the interview were shared widely online, drawing even more attention to the issue. Celebrities and influencers joined the conversation, using their platforms to amplify her message. One popular actor tweeted, "Dr. Rivers is a hero. We need to hold these companies accountable and put an end to this kind of discrimination once and for all." But while the public rallied around Dr. Rivers, the airline chain remained eerily silent. For days, they refused to comment on the growing scandal, leaving many to speculate about their next move. When they finally issued a statement, it fell flat. "We apologize for any inconvenience caused to Dr. Rivers and assure our passengers that we are committed to diversity and inclusion," the statement read. However, leaked emails soon surfaced showing executives mocking her complaint. In one exchange, a senior manager referred to her as another entitled passenger looking for attention. The backlash was swift and brutal. Critics slammed the airline for its insincerity, accusing them of failing to take responsibility for their actions. Calls for boycotts spread rapidly, with hashtags like #BoycottAirlineX trending alongside #StandWithMaya. For Dr. Rivers, the escalating tension marked a turning point. She knew the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but she also knew she wasn't alone anymore. Millions of voices stood beside her, united in their demand for justice. Would you like me to proceed with Part 4 or make adjustments to this section? Let me know. Public reaction was swift and scathing. Social media erupted with criticism, calling out the airline for its lack of accountability. "This isn't an apology," one commenter wrote. "It's a PR stunt." Another added, "They're treating this like a minor inconvenience instead of the systemic issue it really is." Even loyal customers who had flown with the airline for years expressed disappointment, vowing to take their business elsewhere. But the backlash reached new heights when internal emails leaked online. An anonymous whistleblower within the company sent screenshots of private conversations between executives to several journalists. In one particularly damning exchange, a senior manager dismissed Dr. Rivers' complaint as overblown, referring to her as just another passenger looking for attention. Another email joked about how these people always play the race card. When these emails surfaced, outrage exploded across the internet. The airline's name trended worldwide, not for its services, but for its blatant disregard for accountability. News outlets covered the story extensively, interviewing legal experts and civil rights advocates who condemned the company's behavior. "These emails show a culture of arrogance and prejudice," said one lawyer during a live TV segment. "This isn't just about one incident, it's about a pattern of discrimination that needs to be addressed." For Dr. Rivers, Reading those emails was gut-wrenching. She sat alone in her hotel room, staring at the screen as tears welled up in her eyes. The words stung not because they were surprising, but because they confirmed what she had suspected all along. The airline didn't see her as a human being deserving of respect. Instead, they saw her as a nuisance, a problem to be managed rather than a person to be valued. Despite the hurt, Dr. Rivers refused to let the emails break her spirit. If anything, they strengthened her resolve. That evening, she posted a video message on social media, speaking directly to her supporters. Sitting in front of a plain white wall, dressed casually in a sweater and jeans, she looked calm but resolute. "I want to thank everyone who has stood by me during this difficult time," she began, her voice steady. "Your support means more to me than I can express. But today, we've learned something even more disturbing. These leaked emails reveal the truth about how this airline views its passengers, especially those of us who are black or brown. They don't see us as equals. They don't see us as valued customers. And they certainly don't see us as human beings." Her words struck a chord with viewers. Within minutes, the video amassed millions of views, with thousands of comments pouring in. Supporters praised her courage, while critics demanded immediate action against the airline. Calls for boycotts intensified, with hashtags like #BoycottAirlineX trending globally. Travel influencers urged their followers to switch to competing airlines, sharing lists of alternative options. As pressure mounted, the airline scrambled to respond. They released a second statement, this time apologizing for the leaked emails and claiming they did not reflect the company's values. However, their efforts came across as insincere. Many noted that the apology focused more on defending the airline's reputation than acknowledging the harm done to Dr. Rivers and countless others. Behind closed doors, executives panicked. Board meetings stretched late into the night as they debated how to salvage their image. Some suggested launching a high-profile advertising campaign promoting diversity, while others proposed firing the employees involved in the email scandal. But none of these ideas addressed the root cause of the problem, a deeply ingrained culture of bias and complacency. Meanwhile, Dr. Rivers consulted with her team of advisors, including lawyers and public relations experts. Together, they discussed the possibility of taking legal action, not just for herself but for every traveler subjected to discriminatory practices. For Dr. Rivers, this wasn't just about seeking justice anymore. It was about holding the airline accountable and ensuring that no one else would have to endure what she had gone through. As the days passed, it became clear that the airline's attempts to downplay the situation had failed miserably. The public wasn't ready to forgive or forget, not until real change happened. And for Dr. Rivers, the fight was far from over. Would you like me to proceed with Part 5 or make adjustments to this section? Let me know. Dr. Maya Rivers knew it was time to take a stand, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly at an airport. With the overwhelming support of her followers and the glaring evidence of systemic bias against the airline, she decided to file a lawsuit. This wasn't about revenge or personal gain. It was about accountability. She wanted to send a message loud and clear. Discrimination would no longer be tolerated. Her legal team worked tirelessly to prepare the case. Led by renowned civil rights attorney Sarah Chen, they gathered every piece of evidence they could find, screenshots of the leaked emails, witness testimonies from former airline employees, and detailed accounts from passengers who had faced similar treatment. Dr. Rivers also provided her own documentation, including photos of her medications, TSA receipts, and even screenshots of hateful comments directed at her online after the story went viral. The lawsuit accused the airline chain of negligence, defamation, and complicity in racial profiling. It argued that their partnership with TSA contractors perpetuated discriminatory practices, targeting black travelers disproportionately. Additionally, her hospital foundation joined the suit, claiming the incident had damaged its reputation and disrupted fundraising efforts. After all, Dr. Rivers' name was synonymous with trust and compassion, a stark contrast to how the airline portrayed her during this ordeal. When news of the lawsuit broke, it dominated headlines worldwide. Journalists dissected every detail, analyzing the potential impact on both the airline industry and civil rights law. Legal experts weighed in, predicting that if successful, the case could set a precedent for holding corporations accountable for enabling discriminatory practices. For the airline, The lawsuit felt like a nightmare come true. Their stock prices plummeted as investors grew nervous about the financial implications. Executives scrambled to mitigate the damage, hiring top-tier lawyers to defend them in court. Behind closed doors, tensions ran high. Some board members pushed for a settlement, fearing prolonged litigation would only worsen their public image. Others insisted on fighting back aggressively, convinced they could win based on technicalities. Meanwhile, Dr. Rivers remained focused and composed. She attended press conferences alongside Attorney Chen, speaking passionately about the need for change. "This isn't just my fight," she said during one televised interview. "It's a fight for justice, for every traveler who has ever been made to feel less than human because of their race. We deserve better. And we're going to make sure things change." Her words resonated deeply with the public. Supporters rallied around her, organizing protests outside major airports where the airline operated. Passengers held signs reading *No Justice, No Flights and Accountability Now. The movement gained momentum, drawing attention not only to Dr. Rivers' case but to broader issues of racial profiling in transportation security. As preparations for the trial began, depositions were taken and witnesses were called to testify. Former TSA agents came forward, admitting they had received unofficial guidance to target certain groups of people. One agent described being told to look out for passengers who seem out of place, which often translated into racial profiling. These testimonies painted a damning picture of systemic inequity within the system. The airline tried to discredit these claims, arguing that individual agents acted independently and that the company itself bore no responsibility. But their defense fell flat when internal training manuals surfaced, revealing coded language used to identify high-risk passengers, language that disproportionately targeted minorities. Throughout the process, Dr. Rivers stayed grounded, leaning on her family, friends, and faith for strength. She spent long hours reviewing documents with her legal team, determined to leave no stone unturned. Though the stress was undeniable, she found solace in knowing she was fighting for something bigger than herself. As the trial date approached, anticipation reached a fever pitch. Would the airline be held accountable? Could this landmark case pave the way for meaningful reform? For Dr. Rivers, the answers mattered, but what mattered more was ensuring that her voice, along with countless others, was finally heard. Would you like me to proceed with Part 6 or make adjustments to this section? Let me know. As the trial began, the courtroom became a battleground, not just for Dr. Maya Rivers and the airline, but for public opinion itself. Every detail of the case was dissected in real time, with journalists camped outside the courthouse and live updates streaming across news channels. The trial wasn't just being fought in front of a judge and jury. It was unfolding in living rooms, on social media feeds, and in conversations around dinner tables worldwide. Inside the courtroom, tensions ran high. Dr. Rivers sat quietly beside her attorney, Sarah Chen, dressed in a crisp navy blue suit that matched her calm demeanor. Her presence commanded respect, even as lawyers for the airline launched aggressive attacks against her credibility. They questioned everything, from why she carried prescription medications to whether her viral post was an attempt to gain publicity. But Dr. Rivers remained unfazed, answering each question with clarity and poise. The prosecution presented its case first, calling witnesses who painted a damning picture of the airline's practices. Former employees testified about unofficial policies targeting passengers based on race, while civil rights experts explained how these actions perpetuated systemic racism. One particularly emotional moment came when a passenger named Lisa Thompson took the stand. She recounted her own experience of being racially profiled at an airport, breaking down in tears as she described the humiliation she felt. "It's not just about what happens to you," she said. "It's about how it makes you feel like you don't belong." The defense countered by arguing that the airline had no direct control over TSA operations and therefore couldn't be held responsible for individual agents' actions. They'd also tried to shift blame onto Dr. Rivers, suggesting she exaggerated the incident for personal gain. Their tone grew increasingly combative, accusing her of exploiting the situation to tarnish the airline's reputation. But their strategy backfired. Public sentiment overwhelmingly favored Dr. Rivers, and the harsher the defense pushed, the more sympathy she garnered. Social media erupted with hashtags like #JusticeForMaya and #StopRacialProfiling, flooding timelines with messages of support. Influencers and celebrities amplified her story, urging their followers to stay informed about the case. Even late-night talk show hosts joked about the airline's PR disaster, mocking their clumsy attempts to defend themselves. Outside the courtroom, protests grew larger and louder. Activists organized rallies near major airports where the airline operated, holding signs and chanting slogans demanding accountability. Passengers shared videos of themselves canceling flights with the company, vowing never to fly with them again until meaningful changes were made. Competitors seized the opportunity, offering discounts to dissatisfied customers and publicly condemning racial profiling in travel security. Amid the chaos, Dr. Rivers stayed focused. Each night after court adjourned, she returned to her hotel room and spent hours preparing for the next day. She reviewed transcripts, rehearsed potential cross-examinations, and leaned on her team for guidance. Despite the mounting pressure, she refused to let the negativity consume her. Instead, she channeled her energy into advocating for change, not just for herself, but for everyone affected by discrimination. One evening, during a rare break from the trial, Dr. Rivers addressed reporters gathered outside the courthouse. Standing tall under the bright lights, she spoke directly to the camera. "This trial is not just about me," she said firmly. "It's about every person who has ever been treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. It's about holding powerful institutions accountable and making sure they understand the harm they cause. I won't stop fighting until we see real change." Her words resonated deeply, further galvanizing public support. For many, Dr. Rivers had become more than a plaintiff. She was a symbol of resilience and hope. People admired her courage, her determination, and her unwavering commitment to justice. By the time closing arguments arrived, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Both sides delivered passionate speeches, leaving the jury with difficult decisions to make. As deliberations began, the world waited anxiously for the verdict. Whatever the outcome, one thing was certain: this case had already sparked a movement, one that would continue to push for equality long after the trial ended. Would you like me to proceed with Part 7 or make adjustments to this section? Let me know. After days of intense deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict. The courtroom was packed to capacity. Lawyers, reporters, activists, and supporters filled every seat, while others stood along the walls or waited anxiously outside. Dr. Maya Rivers sat in the front row, flanked by her legal team and close family members. Her expression remained calm, but inside, she felt a mix of emotions: hope, fear, and determination all swirling together. When the judge entered the room and called for silence, the tension became almost unbearable. As the foreman stood to deliver the verdict, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "We find the defendant, Airline X, liable for negligence, defamation, and complicity in racial profiling," he announced firmly. Gasps rippled through the crowd as people processed the words. For Dr. Rivers, it was a moment of vindication, a validation of everything she had fought so hard to prove. The judge then outlined the ruling. Airline X would pay $10 million in damages, $5 million to Dr. Rivers personally, and another $5 million to fund initiatives combating racial bias in transportation security. Additionally, the airline was ordered to implement sweeping reforms, including mandatory anti-bias training for all employees, regular audits of their partnership with TSA contractors, and transparent reporting on incidents of discrimination. These measures were designed not only to punish the airline but also to prevent similar injustices in the future. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the trial, cheers erupted from Dr. Rivers' supporters. Reporters scrambled to capture her reaction, cameras flashing wildly as she rose to address the court. Standing tall, she thanked the jury for their decision and expressed gratitude to everyone who had supported her throughout the process. "This victory is not mine alone," she said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "It belongs to every person who has ever been treated unfairly because of their race, religion, or background. Today, we've taken a step toward justice, but our work doesn't end here. We must continue fighting to dismantle systemic racism wherever it exists." Outside the courthouse, celebrations broke out among activists and allies. Protest signs bearing slogans like *Justice for Maya* and *End Racial Profiling Now* were raised high as chants echoed through the streets. social media exploded with messages of triumph, with hashtags like #VictoryForMaya trending globally. Influencers praised the landmark ruling, calling it a turning point in the fight against discrimination in travel security. For Airline X, however, the fallout was severe. Their stock prices plummeted further, and thousands of customers canceled flights, vowing never to return. Competitors capitalized on the scandal, offering incentives to dissatisfied travelers and pledging zero-tolerance policies for discriminatory practices. Desperate to salvage their reputation, the airline issued a public statement promising full compliance with the court's orders. They even launched a new PR campaign featuring diverse passengers and emphasizing inclusivity, but critics dismissed it as too little, too late. In the weeks following the verdict, Dr. Rivers focused on putting the settlement funds to good use. She established the Rivers Foundation for Equity in Travel, a nonprofit organization dedicated to addressing racial bias in airports and other public spaces. The foundation funded research, advocacy programs, and educational workshops aimed at creating safer, more inclusive environments for travelers of all backgrounds. Dr. Rivers also used part of the settlement to launch a scholarship program for underrepresented students pursuing careers in healthcare, law, and civil rights activism. Named after her late mother, who had always encouraged her to stand up for what was right, the scholarships provided financial support and mentorship opportunities to young leaders eager to make a difference. Though the trial had ended, Dr. Rivers knew the fight for equality was far from over. Systemic racism wasn't something that could be eradicated overnight. It required sustained effort, education, and accountability. But for now, she allowed herself a moment to reflect on how far they'd come. What started as a humiliating encounter at airport security had grown into a movement that inspired millions and forced one of the largest airlines in the world to confront its biases. As she looked out at the sea of smiling faces celebrating the verdict, Dr. Rivers felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was just the beginning. Would you like me to proceed with Part 8 or make adjustments to this section? Let me know. Months after the trial concluded, Dr. Maya Rivers' life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. The landmark ruling against Airline X wasn't just a personal victory. It sparked a wave of change that rippled far beyond the courtroom. Her story became a symbol of resilience and justice, inspiring countless individuals to speak out against discrimination and demand accountability from powerful institutions. The Rivers Foundation for Equity in Travel quickly gained momentum, attracting support from activists, policymakers, and even rival airlines eager to distance themselves from the controversy surrounding Airline X. Through partnerships with advocacy groups and government agencies, the foundation launched groundbreaking initiatives aimed at reforming airport security practices. One such program introduced bias awareness training for TSA agents, incorporating real-life scenarios shared by passengers who had experienced racial profiling. Another initiative created anonymous reporting systems, allowing travelers to document incidents without fear of retaliation. Dr. Rivers herself became a prominent voice in national conversations about systemic racism. She was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and congressional hearings, where she advocated for policy changes to protect marginalized communities. Her speeches often began with the same message: justice isn't just about winning a case or punishing wrongdoing. It's about creating systems that treat everyone fairly, no matter who they are. Her scholarship program also flourished, providing opportunities to dozens of students each year. Many recipients credited Dr. Rivers with helping them achieve their dreams, whether it was becoming a doctor, lawyer, or community organizer. One recipient, a young woman named Aisha Patel, wrote a heartfelt letter thanking Dr. Rivers for believing in her potential. "Because of you," Aisha wrote, "I know my voice matters, and I'll use it to make the world better, just like you did." Meanwhile, the airline industry underwent significant shifts. In response to public pressure and legal scrutiny, several major carriers adopted stricter anti-discrimination policies and invested in diversity training programs. Competitors of Airline X publicly distanced themselves from the scandal, pledging to prioritize inclusivity and transparency. Some companies went so far as to appoint chief equity officers tasked with ensuring fairness across all operations. For Airline X, recovery proved challenging. Despite implementing court-mandated reforms, their reputation remained tarnished. Passengers continued to boycott their flights, and many former employees left the company due to internal dissatisfaction. However, the silver lining lay in the lessons learned, not only by Airline X but by the entire industry. The case served as a wake-up call, forcing airlines to confront long-standing biases and reevaluate how they treated their customers. Dr. Rivers often reflected on the journey she had been through. From the humiliating encounter at airport security to the global movement that followed, every step had tested her strength and resolve. Yet, through it all, she remained grounded in her mission to create lasting change. She frequently reminded herself of something her mother used to say: even the smallest act of courage can start a revolution. By the end of the year, Dr. Rivers returned to what she loved most: saving lives. Her hospital celebrated record-breaking fundraising efforts, thanks in part to the renewed attention brought by her advocacy work. Colleagues marveled at her ability to balance activism with her demanding medical career, but Dr. Rivers simply shrugged it off. "This is who I am," she told them. A healer, a fighter, and a believer in justice. As she stood in her hospital's pediatric ward one evening, watching children laugh and play despite their illnesses, Dr. Rivers felt a deep sense of fulfillment. These moments reminded her why she had chosen this path: to give hope to those who needed it most. And while the scars of her experience would always remain, they now served as reminders of her strength and determination. In the years to come, historians would look back on Dr. Maya Rivers' fight as a turning point, a moment when society took a bold step toward dismantling systemic racism in travel and beyond. For her, though, the true legacy was simpler. It was the knowledge that she had inspired others to keep fighting, keep speaking up, and keep believing in the possibility of a fairer, kinder world. And that, she thought with a quiet smile, was worth everything. Would you like me to make any adjustments to this final section? Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to add.